Hey everybody, it's Mr. Mazzoro, and today we're gonna go into how organisms eat and avoid being eaten in the epipelagic zone and in the deep. And we're not gonna need to divide up the epipelagic zone or the pelagic zone into the epimesobathy. Here we're just gonna talk about the surface and the deep. And unfortunately, here's the lesson where we're actually going to talk about bioluminescence and really kind of get into some nitty gritties about deep sea fish. But you're going to rapidly find out that we don't know a lot about the fish down there. Keep in mind, there's less than 2% of the deep ocean that's explored. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the area in which these organisms live. So unfortunately, we're going to get to this area and you're going to find that there's not a lot I have to say about it because we just don't know a lot about it. But that being said, we're going to talk about the sense organs that helps organisms find food and avoid becoming prey in the deep. We're going to talk about how organisms defend themselves in the surface, as well as what the difference is between a pursuit fish, a fish that actually pursues its prey and then catches it like a cheetah, and the organisms that ambush their prey, the fish that won't pursue but instead will lunge out and actually eat their prey whole like a crocodile. And then I know it's, just one bullet point. It seems kind of general, but then we'll just talk about in a couple of slides how fish avoid food and get predators in the deep. And believe it or not, the reason why it's one bullet point is there's very little differentiation between adaptations that deep sea fish have towards avoiding food and adaptations that deep sea fish have in getting prey, as far as we can tell. So here we go. So getting food in the epipelagic zone. There are really three sense organs that are going to help all organisms in the epipelagic zone find food. The first, eyes. Fish have large eyes for their body size. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Fish have large eyes for their body size. And if they live in the epipelagic zone, there's plenty of light. So fish are going to have large eyes, which helps them to see food, or in some cases, even see predators. All fish and cartilaginous fish also have lateral lines. Lateral lines are a little bit weird. They're sense organs that bony fish and cartilaginous fish have that allow them to sense pressure waves. Your ears sense pressure waves, but these aren't ears. Fish don't have ears. They just have these organs that allow them to sense when something is sending out a pressure wave right next to them. And as a result, they can use these in order to help find food or help avoid being eaten by knowing when something is right next to them about to be eaten. When you go to a fish store and you go up to the feeder goldfish tank, you start slamming on the tank and you like to watch all the fish freak out. The reason they're all freaking out is because when you slam on the side of the tank, you're sending these huge pressure waves through the middle of the tank. And that makes suddenly everyone in the tank go from a feeling like everything is right here to a feeling like everything is right here. And all of a sudden they freak out because they think something is right next to them. So that's the reason why they freak out. It's their lateral lines. Last, if you're a marine mammal, you don't have a lateral line, but you have echolocation. You have an organ inside of your body, actual ears, that you can send out voice signals, basically sounds, and you can hear the echoes of organisms coming back to you. Usually they're swim bladders, because keep in mind, the swim bladder is the only not dense area of the fish. I mean, a fish's body is basically going to be exactly the same as the water around it. The swim bladder inside the body is going to be the only thing that's going to produce a sound that's different than the water around it. Lateral lines, large eyes, and the ability to hear if you're a marine mammal is how you're going to find food in the epipelagic. Some of the sense organs that are going to allow you to find food in the epipelagic. If you want to avoid predators in the epipelagic, there's two ways to do it. The first is to be clear. Transparency is basically like blending in with water. The reason why organisms aren't blue is because the water isn't uniformly blue. And depending on what time of year it is, it might not be blue at all. It might be green with a photoplankton bloom. So just being blue doesn't really help you. Water is clear. It's transparent, especially in the epipelagic. All colors are there. So the only way to actually blend in this transparent area is to be transparent also. The problem is, if you have organs inside of yourself, if you have hearts and livers and everything that makes you muscle and bones and everything that makes you more advanced, you can't be transparent. That stuff can't all be transparent. So you're going to blend in, but you're going to blend in not by being blue, but by an adaptation known as counter shading. Countershading is a pattern you may have noticed that a lot of epipelagic fish have. Countershading means that most epipelagic fish are dark on top and light on bottom. Why? Well, if we're looking up at an organism's light bottom, it would be silhouetted against a brightly lit surface, and that light bottom would blend in with the lightly lit surface. If we're looking down at an organism's dark top, it would blend in with the dark, deep ocean below. Dark on top, light on bottom is as close organisms are going to come to actually blending in with either the lit surface or the deep ocean. Organisms aren't going to be like chameleons because you would constantly have to change color depending on what time of day it is and what shade blue the ocean is and where you are. So countershading is really what's going to allow you, if you're not transparent and you're more advanced organisms, to blend in and hide from predators. When talking about predators and really even talking about avoiding becoming food, organisms are going to try to get away by having a streamlined body shape. That means they don't have a lot of things sticking out from their body. Fish are basically this oblong shape that's compressed on the sides that helps them cut through the water evenly. And they're going to have stiff spines and fins that are going to help them maneuver their body at high speed. You can imagine if this large fin wasn't there, this organism took a turn, it would start barrel rolling through the ocean. This large fin helps them stop turning this way or turning that way as they turn their body in the water. Also, depending on whether organisms are ambush predators or pursuit predators, depending on whether fish are ambush predators or pursuit predators, they're going to have different muscle types. Fishes that have mostly red muscle are pursuit predators. That's because red muscle, which you see in raw tuna or salmon, helps in long, sustained swimming, because what makes it red is this protein myoglobin, which helps store oxygen. Any fish with predominantly red muscle is going to go for long, sustained swimming. It's going to be a pursuit predator. It's going to be a fish that gets its food through swimming long distances after and eventually hoping its prey exhausts itself and then eating it. If you don't have red muscle, you're going to have white muscle. Grouper, whitefish, these would be organisms with white muscle. White muscle fatigues very, very fast, so it wouldn't be good for long, sustained swimming, but it is very good for short bursts of power. Organisms that are mostly white muscle, fish that consist of mostly white muscle, are going to be therefore ambush predators. They're not fish that, if you're like redfish, are going to pursue their prey. Instead, they're going to wait for their prey to come to them and literally lunge out for them. Now, you may be thinking, okay, but tuna in a can is red. You have to remember that tuna in a can isn't raw, it's cooked. So I'm talking about raw muscle here. If you looked at raw tuna like you get in a sushi place, that's red, pursuit predator. And then, necessarily speaking, if you think about grouper, right, or halibut, those would be white-muscled fish. Those would be ambush predators. Pursuit predators have red muscle. Ambush predators have white muscle. Muscles differentiate in the epipelagic zone according to how a fish hunts. Okay, so now let's transfer into the deep. Let's go into the deep ocean. And like I said, we don't know a lot about deep ocean fish, so this is going to be kind of a short part of this lecture, but bear with me. Organisms in the deep have highly evolved eyes, and this helps them both find food and avoid becoming prey. How? Well, their eyes are very, very big, which allows them to catch a lot of light. And aside from having one retina, they all have secondary retinas. Why do they have secondary retinas? Well, this increases their peripheral vision. This secondary vision center in their eye helps them see almost completely around themselves, not only allowing their eye to gather more light, but also allowing them to perceive more of an area around them. As a result, these organisms in the mesopelagic zone and deeper can perceive more areas around them and see more food around them or avoid more predators around them. Also, organisms in the deep are usually going to have gigantic mouths with expandable stomachs like accordions. And this allows them to guarantee that any organism that they do see with their large eyes and secondary retinas, they're going to be able to eat. If you're a deep sea fish, there's a pretty good chance you're only going to see maybe 1-2 fish every month. So you want to make sure that every single fish that you can see, you're going to be able to eat and consume. And you can't eat or consume something that you can't physically fit in your mouth. And that's where a large mouth and expandable stomach comes in. It helps them make sure that every organism they see, they're going to be able to eat within reason. This is the reason why deep sea fish a lot of the time have those wacky large mouths with those huge teeth. Those large mouths and expandable stomachs and huge teeth allows them to guarantee that they can necessarily eat whatever they come across. Also, organisms in the deep are going to avoid becoming prey, not by counter-shading, but actually through bioluminescence, through counter-illumination. Counter-shading is the surface, counter-illumination is in the deep. Some organisms, especially in the mesopelagic zone, have special light-producing cells on the bottom of their bodies, and these cells are called photophores. These cells can perceive the color of light streaming down from the surface and change to match that light. This breaks up the organism's silhouette and therefore makes them a lot harder to see if you're below them and therefore eat if you're below them. Counter-illumination, unlike counter-shading, is actually producing colored light to match the surface, not just being dark on top and light on bottom like in counter-shading. Counter-shading, dark on top, light on bottom, that's the surface. Counter-illumination is bioluminescence, that's the deep. Both are ways that organisms blend in, but one is producing light, counter-illumination, deep sea. One is just blending in with the light that's already there, that's counter-shading, the surface. Last but not least, organisms are going to find food and avoiding becoming prey using bioluminescence. Generally speaking, we're pretty sure that when organisms have bioluminescent organs around their eyes or mouth, that these are bioluminescent organs that are meant for offense, finding food. These are lures that are going to attract the organism to either their eyes so they can see it in their mouth so that they can eat it. Any glowing around the eyes or mouth is offensive bioluminescence. Vice versa, flashes or whole body glowing or squirting out of glowing substances, these would be defensive biolumination. Why would a whole body flash be defensive? I mean, it just attracts an organism to you. Well, you have to remember that sometimes these organisms are going to school. So if they all start flashing together, sort of like a bunch of Christmas lights, it's hard to pick out any one organism. And as soon as you see that one organism flash, you're going to be distracted by another organism flashing in the other direction. You're going to hopefully spend all of your time swimming towards flashes and none of your time actually getting one of those organisms. Also, squirting out a bioluminescent substance, just like here, that would cause the organism to eat the bioluminescence or be distracted by the bioluminescent goo and not necessarily eat the fish that's squirting it out. Eyes and mouth glowing, offensive. Whole body flashes or squirting out of bioluminescent stuff, defensive biolumination. So that's it. That's it for finding food and avoiding predators in the surface and in the deep. In terms of the surface, the sense organs that help them find food is going to be lateral lines, large eyes, as well as hearing. And in order to defend themselves, organisms in the surface are going to be counter-shading, dark on top, light on bottom, to help them blend in with either the dark bottom or the lit surface. They're also going to differentiate in terms of the color muscle that they have. And the reason they're going to differentiate in terms of the color muscle that they have is that cruisers or pursuit predators, organisms that are going to chase after their food in order to eat it, are going to need more oxygen-storing red myoglobin in their muscle. Redfish, pursuit predators. Ambush predators are going to need more power muscle than endurance muscle that cruisers have. So they're going to have white muscle with less myoglobin, but that's better at short bursts of power. Redfish, pursuit predators. Whitefish, ambush predators. And keep in mind, this differentiates with only raw muscle. Last but not least, deep sea fish. What sense organs do they have? They have large eyes with expandable stomachs. They have secondary retinas in their eyes, which helps expand their field. They have bioluminescence, either near their eyes or their mouth, which helps them draw in prey, or they have the ability to turn their entire bodies bright for a second or squirt out bioluminescent glue, which allows them to distract possible predators. So that's it for finding food and avoiding predators in the epipelagic as well as in the deep ocean. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about mating in the surface and mating in the deep, the same way we did here with finding food and avoiding predators. Thanks.